Down yonder in the Minnehaha where sprawl is a major crop, Department of Transportation's planned a road through a favorite park. For 40 years they've tried to clear this path where we don't want one. Now in this little neighborhood in an old oak wood they've run into a little problem.
When I first heard that name, Earth First, I thought it was a bunch of Indian people out here. Because that's what it's supposed to be all about. The earth is supposed to be first all the time. That's our mother.
I love the idea of light rail and how it's clean. What I don't like is a level 1 highway planned right through this green space. They don't make green space anymore. You cannot go out and buy a 200-300-year-old oak tree, and it seems to be it's illegal.
The folks who are planning transportation in this country seem to decide that they're going to focus on moving cars instead of moving people. And from that point on, the whole system just kind of got irrational. This is a 40-year-old project that just doesn't make sense anymore. Light rail makes sense. That always made sense. But we had light rail. We had 500 miles of it.
And we got it all right here. The falls, Camp Coldwater, the birthplace of Minnesota, and Fort Snelling, and the place of the interment down there. So it'd be a great historic park, but instead they want to run a road through it.
They're treating me the same way that they treated the Indians. They're pushing me off my land, just like they did them.
Are you going to let the state of Minnesota and the United States government run a screaming road through the Plymouth Rock of your state?
No! Not gonna take these houses for a highway. Not gonna harm one limb on these old trees. From now on, this project's going my way. Someone please inform the DOT. The Minnehaha Hiawatha highway stays in its place. Minnehaha Hiawatha will stay right in your face. Come on over, stop the dozers, not afraid to barricade.
People are gonna have to leave.
Keep spouses in their houses, the politicians are all louses. They don't stop the reroute right away.
Today's visit to the mayor's office was sponsored by the Minneapolis Police Department and the letter O.
Along the river bluffs, there was trails leading right to the springs, right to good campsites, and this was one of them. This area here has artifacts, Indian artifacts going way back in time. This is what gave life to the fort. This is what gave life to the settlers. This gave life to the Indians that lived in the area. This was the gathering place. The beginning of Minnesota government started here. The families of Minnesota first started here, and the relations between the Indians and the settlers, it was all here. The settlers were kicked off of the Camp Coldwater area in the spring of 1840. So all that you had left was the trading post, and Indian blacksmiths were allowed to stay here. When I first came out here, I had permission from Bob Klaus to dig. First shovelful came up with an 1801 Spanish coin. Blacksmithing artifacts, a hinge, here's a front lock, here's a piece of a chain. I tried to give these artifacts to the Historical Society for 2 years, and nobody would take them. Nobody would come over to Camp Coldwater and walk through the site with me.
Coldwater Spring pumps out 75 gallons of water per minute, fresh enough to drink and use, and you could live on that water. And that's medicine water to me is what it is. MnDOT, they want to build part of their ReRoute plan and possibly disrupt the water flow by building too close to the underground water table.
I think people wanted to save it just because it is the best park in the city.
Minnehaha Creek starts at Lake Minnetonka and comes all the way down here and creates the Minnehaha Falls and then empties out into the Mississippi River down here. My father took me down into these trails down here hiking when I was a kid, and this is my playground here. This is what we call the oak savanna here. This oak savanna goes way up along the river edge, and it's the last remaining oak savanna in this Twin Cities area. I guess one of my concerns is taking out all these trees here and then also getting a little bit too close to the river bluff over there.
They could have run the light rail or busway as it was talked about originally, and the road down the current alignment, but it would cost $15 million more. And the only reason why they dumped it off into the park was to save that money. The Citizens Board worked out a lot of the details. The environmental impact statement which they wrote up stopped at 54th Street. Well, because of their budgets, things took so long, nothing was presented until '92. And then they got some community feedback that nobody liked it, and they still didn't have any money until '96. And that's when they really started working on it.
We kept hearing about this highway that was going to go through, take our house, take out all of Riverview Road. And I am the last house that still has someone living in it.
And that's when the real opposition started.
And that was with the meeting at the Roosevelt High School.
The high school was just filled with people, and every official that there had ever been that had been trying to squelch public opinion was up in the front.
It was the same highway meetings where everything was just being thrown at you and you didn't have a chance to.
People were moaning and groaning and hissing.
Telling my son, I gotta get up, I gotta say something.
Almost everybody in this room has come here to testify against the road, and yet we get 4 minutes for each side on each topic, and the room just burst into this like incredible applause.
And so after the meeting we got together and decided we were going to try and do something. 9 of us. And that's how Park and River Alliance formed.
I was walking my dog down by the park, and one of those days I saw Save the Park signs posted.
Collecting signatures to try to get the city council and the mayor.
Where we were out there talking to people every weekend.
It was an incredible effort because the group had done so much research already, and it was they who actually produced these huge maps where you could, see where you were and how this reroute was actually going to go.
I had called Denny Shosted and asked him what we could do, and he just said, well, about 200 signatures, and somebody will look at them.
When I was riding my bike through Minnehaha Park, and there's a guy with a cardboard table, he just kind of waved me over and said, did you know there's going to be a road right where you're riding your bike? And so I signed the petition.
I called when we had about 500, and he said, oh, 500 isn't going to get you anywhere. And I said, well, how many is it going to take? And, a couple thousand.
I'm a citizen, and I originally started from this position, and there's these activists that are saying this.
They already had a 4-lane road, and they're building another 4-lane road to replace it. And then they're doing it 50 feet away from a light rail line. Try to figure that out, why there is a brand new road sitting right next to mass transit.
Somebody PR-wise, that MnDOT or whatever, gave out these talking points. The only trees that will be lost are scrub trees along an abandoned rail bed. It didn't match up with the map I had, because when I walked at the map, the only trees we lost were not scrub trees. There was going to be lots of trees lost, and there's going to be lots of land disturbed.
There's a road going through the middle of a park. People who only read the newspapers didn't know the story.
Traditional media was not really all that interested.
They downplayed the reasons why it was going through, what the benefits were, how much it's costing.
They were a huge advocate for it. Their editorial page wrote things in support of it over and over and over again.
Then suddenly in January, I think, of 1997, we had our first meeting of the Stop the Reroute Coalition.
Which was also going to work within the system, but it was a little bit more going to sue the system.
But when they brought the lawsuits to court, the judge said, well, statute of limitations had expired because the environmental impact statement was done in '85. You'd need to have said something in the first 7 years.
When I would take elected officials for tours of it, I would say to them, the fight is going to be worse than anything you've ever imagined. I'll tell you the number one reason why I think that you should support and urge people to build in the current alignment is that I just believe that the public is going to fight this thing.
Well, when we got 7,000, 8,000 signatures, nobody would look at them. Denny Shosted said at that point that 1 million is not going to do you any good, Carol.
People are out of options. The representatives are not representing the people.
Many of us felt like we were just, you know, running into a brick wall over and over and over again.
And there was talk about, you know, forming this relationship with the Neighborhood Coalition and Earth First, and I was really interested in it.
The other people that had been fighting this ReRoute for a long time, that this used to be a burial area. And then I talked to Chris Leith and some other elders about what this area was, and Gary Cavender.
Just as Genesis is a sacred myth, the Dakota people arrived here at the center of the earth, at the convolution of the Minnesota and the Mississippi River, the Mdewakanton.
We saw the trees, and then we saw the spring. We had to sneak through the fence to get to the spring, and we were there for a lot longer than we anticipated, but we knew then it had to be saved. At 7 o'clock that next morning, the 10th of August, the phone rang, and it was Mary Jo, and she said, "Can you come over now, because we think they're gonna take the houses?" And I was really scared. I thought, oh boy, comes my first arrest. And we got over there, and the police came and just kind of looked around and talked to a few people, and then they left. It was like, okay, that's good.
Members of the Mdewakanton Dakota Community, Earth First, Stop the ReRoute, Women's Earth Brigade, and others.
What we are demanding is that Minnesota Department of Transportation call off the reroute of Highway 55, that all decisions on land use in the city of Minneapolis be made by the communities that are affected, that we preserve all green space that remains in the Twin Cities, that the Mendota Mdewakanton Dakota Community be recognized by the federal government as an official tribe, and that all the land claims that they have be recognized, and that this land that we are on here today defending, this sacred land, be returned to them.
We put one teepee up right in her yard, and the staff's there because under federal law they can't come in and touch our staffs, you know. Then we put my teepee up right next to Carol's house in an open lot.
How are you guys doing tonight?
Good.
We started to get a lot of media attention, and word got out that way.
24 hours a day, 6.
They tend to focus a lot on tactics. The challenge always is to use the tactics as a hook, but then to get them to cover the issues.
What if they can run a VO or something?
I think it was the biggest local news story in '98 and '99.
No, I see a couple nubs there.
We could make a lot of these trees work, but maybe there's certain trees that are easier, better shapes, more branches sticking out.
We might choose one that's actually by a road just for visibility to the neighborhood. There's a lot of different strategic, like strategic specifically to stop or strategic for outreach, or one factor would be picking trees that were like close to each other so we could talk and communicate and have sometimes traverses to go from tree to tree, or farther away so that you would cover more ground.
Maybe there's certain trees that are in sort of strategic locations. It's on a big hill where they couldn't roll a cherry picker, or it's close to water, or it's in a place where they absolutely have to clear before any sort of construction can go on.
You climb a tree, you build some kind of a sit. Some of them were stands. You know, we used a lot of makeshift materials.
When you put a pallet up there, it's kind of like a base, and you can pretty much get more comfortable from there.
Me and Toxic put up the first pallet that either of us had ever put up together, and it was called the wobbly sit.
And not because of the IWW either.
No, a net like you rest down into, you know, and your weight is keeping you in place. That's perfect.
We took a lot of safety precautions, trained a lot of people in the right way to do this safely.
Go ahead.
Ideally, you would have food and water up there before the police surrounded the tree. Tree sits in the summer, in the spring, and the fall were a whole other story than tree sits in the winter. Definitely not as fun.
6 o'clock and the air is filled with good things. The scent of eggs and coffee drifts upon the wind. Not far away the sacred fire burns. One century's shift is over and another one begins. People gathered from the four directions, united by a love of life, pledged to stand or fall. It's Wounded Knee and People's Park together. Here will be born a homeland, not a highway to the mall. And it's morning at the Minnehaha Free State, a little strip of stolen native land. Along the banks of the Mississippi, right here the Mendota make their stand. The Mendota people lived along this river, fished among its waters and hunted on the plains. Now they are a people with no homeland. They say here beside the river they'll remain. And it's morning at the Minnehaha Free State, a little strip of stolen native land. Along the banks of the Mississippi, right here the Mendota make their stand.
We're grandparents, you know, and never involved in anything like this, and kind of middle of the road, you know, don't make waves.
I admired the people that were doing it. And I really believe that the politicians and everybody just thought, well, they're going to go away. These people aren't going to stay. They're going to be there forever.
When I lived at the encampment, I didn't stop smiling for about 8 months. Like, my face had this Miss America grin, and I'd never been so happy in my entire life. I'd never felt the sense of possibility that I felt there. That I was a part of that anything was possible and that we could do it together. And we'd been successful for months and months. The days added up, and that was about success. And that was about every day that we knew each other, every day that those trees were standing, every day that we were connected, that was a success. What made it powerful was that it wasn't just defensive. It wasn't just like, stay away.
I'll tell you a little story about Doug Groh. He's a columnist for the Trib, and he's one of the few people that would come down there with me to see this beautiful dance circle. These trees are planted down there in the four directions, and that's what our people did. You danced inside of them, and that is how we talked to the Creator. Well, Doug Groh came down there, and he asked me, he says, what makes you think these trees were planted? And two big acorns came one at a time, pop, pop, hit him right in the head. And his eyes changed right at that time, and I laughed. And he goes, I suppose that's a sign, isn't it? And I go, well, I don't have to say any more about this beautiful sacred place, do I? And he said, no, you don't. I've been asked to carry this pipe from our community. That pipe I brought into that circle of trees. And when I walked between the trees, I heard, hey, 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 hey. There was nobody else around, and there was nobody singing that song. It was my ancestors, I believe, the spirit of this land calling to me. And I'm not a crazy man. I'm a pipe fitter by trade, and I've been doing some kind of what people would say crazy things since then, but I know now that what I have to do here.
You know, this metaphysical relationship we have with the land and the water, that pulls everyone. I mean, it wasn't just Indians.
But I was part of a coven of witches, and we were looking, we wanted to do some community-oriented work. So like, I think 1997 or 98, we started hearing about this. And so we started doing ritual. The land did call out to us. I mean, eventually that's what we figured out. It's like, come help.
30 feet from us was a ceremony that was being held by witches. And to me, I thought, oh, that's so wonderful, because, you know, you could hear their drums and they're singing, and then we'd drum and we'd sing, and you know, it's this back and forth thing.
With them there and the Earth First, and then they had tables out on the street, people to stop, and we did. There was many people stopped to see what was going on, came to visit, showed their support, brought things, food, clothing. I mean, it was just wonderful.
Learning so much about, you know, what it meant to people to be back on their ancestral land, and, you know, making a stand, and what did it mean to be an ally.
When they had arrived and occupied the space, I encountered brave, powerful, beautiful, brave young people. For them, there were high risks as to who was coming along, who was inquiring about them, but some very marvelous things, energy, I would say, or profound kind of level of trust happened in spite of that.
Like the people who were in the lockdowns together, the people who kept the sacred fire going, the people who brought the food, we were a family.
More people came, more people heard about it. Jimmy quit his job, moved in permanently. And Carol was just so delighted. She is such a trooper. Having all these people kind of camped out around her house and trying to take care of a sick husband and fighting to keep her home. And
this whole area is going to be gone. These trees, they're already tearing the trees out. They got branches laying all over. How many trees do you think they killed already? Not to mention, we lost 8,000 trees in this last storm we had. Do we need to lose all these other trees too? No, and it's not just the trees. These are where our people are buried, where our artifacts are, where our history is.
The first time the drum came, it was loud. People think it's a war drum. It's not. It's a peace drum. It's a prayer drum. And that's why I was there, to pray for that land.
What the hell are you doing here? You're making a lot of noise. You're disturbing the neighborhood.
We can sing till 10 o'clock. Their drum to honor the
you're singing? Is that what that is?
Yeah.
It sounds like a bunch of cats howling.
They brought this drum to honor
Be quiet.
the
Why don't you be
have
quiet?
a little respect.
Yeah, but why in this neighborhood? Why?
Because there's issues here.
You know they're going to put a freeway. Indian issues?
Yeah, Indian issues.
Why? Why are they?
Because they've been digging up our bones and artifacts here for years and not saying anything about it.
One of the major complaints was, there's all this Indian drumming going on late at night.
Well, was this a burial ground?
There was death. People have been buried and laid all over around here.
And people would come over and have to be educated that, this is a harvest song. This is a song about, the children. All these things that, you would think people would know about each other's cultures.
What the hell was this guy thinking?
I'm just watering my horse.
Indian Joe's filling up his van.
Indian Jim, how's it going, Red Indian Joe's?
You think that lady in there would have a heart attack if I walked in there and said, "This is my smoke shop. Get out. Out. Free cigarettes and gas for everybody."
Yeah.
Smudge boy! Stop the reroute!
To see people taking things into their own hands through direct action, through civil disobedience.
Yeah, Spider-Man!
And to put my body between this place and whatever would destroy this place.
Spider-Man, Spider-Man, does whatever a spider can.
Spins a web, any side.
Catches corporate sleaze just like flies. Look out.
Earth First was consensus-based. We had a lot of meetings. Sometimes we all grew very weary of the meetings, but I think it was important that we organized in that way.
Morning.
Who's in charge here?
Nobody.
Nobody?
We're just spectators.
But who's the guy up on the crane?
Spider-Man.
I see that.
Yeah.
Historically, the FBI has gone to great lengths to marginalize the American Indian movement and Earth First as a movement, and both these groups were working with a neighborhood coalition and were not in the margins whatsoever.
Tell the guy if he comes down, there won't be any arrest today, but we can't do this every day.
And they're driving away.
The cleaning of Camp Coldwater. Looks like a big gator.
Joe Hill's got a sore butt sitting in the tripod. Lots of folks gather about camping in the backyard. Clapped against the steel door. Garrett's arm is in the hole. Texas got the heart set on staying in their new home.
I have my arm in what we call a sleeping dragon. There's more than 600 pounds of cement embedded in the ground with a PVC pipe. And I have my arm currently locked down into here. This is the first time in the United States that these type of direct action tactics have been used to stop a road.
It's sometimes not the most fulfilling thing in the world to lay down on the ground with your arm in a hole locked to a chain for a couple of days straight.
Could you tell me what's going on today?
Are you taping me?
Yeah.
We're simply disconnecting some existing water lines and a gas line that we have a potential for leaking.
Well, someone needs to know that there's someone locked there.
We were already, for days before this, trying to figure out a direct action to do. We had been talking about going to their headquarters and locking down the construction equipment And they actually played right into our hands because it made us look a lot more reasonable.
Don't do that. We're gonna move.
He'll walk with you.
We want to move out of here. Yeah.
Earth first. The people that are here are the people to save the earth first.
Finally, they said that, you know, we'll definitely leave if you unlock. But then we had a little quick consensus meeting, and the news cameras weren't there yet, and if we hold out, we're going to have a media field day with this. We're going to be able to put the pressure on them. We were talking about doing this anyway. We're going to say that we're not going to unlock until they cancel this project.
We can't unlock until the road is canceled.
It worked really well. It got a lot of coverage. We got a lot of our message out there about this. Hey, we're still here. Hey, we're still determined about this. Hey, we're willing to take risks. It was a pretty good day. This is environmentalism with a face, with real social relationships around it.
You understand if you don't unhook yourself, we're going to have to cut you free and you're going to get arrested and go to jail.
I'm not willingly unhooking myself until the project is stopped.
We love you, Special Sauce! Earth first! Right on, buddy!
And they left for the day, and they didn't come back for another month.
Here is the American Indian movement, and the American Indian movement flag is flying over these houses. And people have a heavy misconception of the American Indian movement. I mean, I know a lot of us did.
People were making connections, and there would be an excitement that you could feel, you know, between those of us having the conversation. And it was at a point in time when there was something that they could plug into, that they could do. Because what was so amazing about this whole thing was that it was people doing what they can do together.
Initially, some of the old-timers who'd grown up there, I think, had a lot of empathy for Carol and understood what she was going through because they themselves had struggled to try and keep their houses. There's a man who shot himself in the woods right near there because he didn't want to leave. He was depressed and, you know, he took his life.
Every elected official in the area and every appointed official with any responsibility about it has said public policy is being well served by finishing that highway and finishing the rail.
The rhetoric I'm hearing here is that the citizens were all involved in this planning.
The alignment emerged from public preferences. It is the product of debate over nearly 3 decades now.
They removed public testimony from the record so that when they turned in their projects, there wouldn't be the opposition that's really there. They didn't even get a slap on the wrist for it.
If they rethink the reroute, will the whole project go down the toilet? Will we lose the federal funding?
I think the specific answer to your question, I think, is yes.
They're about the most arrogant organization of a public body I know of. They have the laws, they have the money. They'll go in with eminent domain, tell you your house can't be there, sorry. They won't even give you what it's worth.
A friendship dance.
MnDOT isn't really all that favorable to Native people because everywhere they put a road, we've been. If they don't say anything about it, don't stir up the beehive, well, then they go ahead and do their projects without anybody knowing until it's too late. Well, we were lucky to get in on this project when we did, or it would have been too late now.
I grew up in southern Minnesota.
This is what we call a tripod. Earth First has used this type of technology to prevent forest roads from going through, but it's the first time that it's really been used in an urban occupation.
We had been planning a march and rally at the state capitol for a long time, put a lot of energy into it, and hundreds of people came out for it.
We have thousands and thousands of people throughout Minnesota that are supporting our efforts in this. We have 10,000 signatures on a petition which is present here today. The Camp Coldwater area is as significant, if not more so, than historic Fort Snelling. Second organization I want to query is the Minnesota Historical Society.
Oh-ho!
For 10 years, you have had artifacts that our historians have found on that site, both native and European, thousands of years old, some things that are hundreds that date from the time of Fort Snelling. State law requires you to do a dig every time such an artifact has been found.
They have blocked off the streets. There are 30 squad cars there. We're unfortunately going to have to cut this somewhat short, but we're taking some more speakers, and then we're going to process to Mendota. Then we encourage everyone to get down to the site.
And sure enough, they started raiding the place. They brought in about 100 cops and created a perimeter around the area where they were digging to take out the water and the gas. They thought they were being slick because we were all gone, but in reality, hundreds of people had gotten off work.
If the water were to go bad in the city again, and this spring is destroyed because of MnDOT's action, as the Commissioner of Public Safety, what is it that you would recommend people in Minneapolis do to get safe water?
We lost the water and the gas line, which we weren't using anyway, but politically I think they lost a lot that day. There was some police brutality. A lot of those images went out.
Don't hurt her arms! Somebody's got to stop it! Our politicians sold it out!
The police were being used as a buffer between us and power institutions to make sure that we didn't, through direct action, become part of the decision-making process.
We appreciate the fact that you were out here being nonviolent today.
About 7 people were arrested that day, some of them hurt. We continued to articulate our sentiments. People could see that this is not a marginal issue, that we had a just and reasonable cause. We gained a lot and the struggle continued to build.
What's it, 32.55? How old do you estimate the tree at about?
About 130, 135 years.
Ain't these beauties?
Yeah.
Well, I wrote an affidavit for the first federal lawsuit claiming that you can't put a highway through a park.
Native people don't put up fences and walls and have stones carved saying, hey, this is the cemetery. But they do put up marker trees. And when you have 4 trees like that, our people pray in the 4 directions.
Road warriors. We're road warriors.
This is our synagogue, our church, our temple.
To talk about bur oak trees for a moment. And so this is where the prairie ends and the great hardwood forest of the east begins. And the bur oak is the signature tree of this area. When you go down and Sky points out the 4 trees, these are bur oak trees. And they grow at the edge of the prairie.
You know, high school classes and elementary school classes were coming out to the encampment every week to visit on field trips. They were learning about how one locks oneself down to a house, and not only how, but why someone might do that. We came here 4 months ago and set up lockdown sites all over the camp to prevent destruction of this land. We're here because all over the world, the earth is being destroyed and the earth is crying out for us to prevent that destruction. There were rumors this past week about sending in the National Guard, and they have a much harder time doing it now if they decide to at all. And that's because of this community support. That's because of all these cultures coming together.
Let us rejoice in the unity of all races, cultures. I told them about what was happening over here. They wanted to come over here now for a prayer for the land.
What one has to look at is a complete system that the Metro Council has come up with, a regional transit plan that has to start someplace. And we have selected the light rail transit corridor in Hiawatha as that place to start because all the constellations are properly aligned.
The unions were for this, the construction companies were for this, everybody's pushed for it. This was a lot of money coming down the pipe, hundreds of millions of dollars.
The 2 modes at this point will not fit together on the existing Minnehaha Avenue.
We can creatively come up with solutions that would maintain transit along the current alignment and preserve and protect the green space and the natural and culturally historic areas in the greenway that extends from Minnehaha Falls all the way to Fort Snelling and beyond.
But I think that it became this whole thing that if this group of people get them to change it, then other people, other places might get people to change it. And I almost think it became more of a war of egos versus the battle over what was right or wrong.
The Park and River Alliance has had a lawsuit underway for some time now, and that appeal is still underway.
We want to know where the hydrogeology is before you start this project. Why do you think there is such a hubbub down in that park?
They knew all the time that they were destroying something that was environmentally important, something that was historically important, something that was important to the community, and they just didn't care.
Okay.
Part of it is that MnDOT itself as a culture is arrogant because they have guaranteed funding. They don't need to go to the legislature for funding. They're the Pentagon of state government.
Earth First was doing direct actions, defending the space physically, nonviolently. The Neighborhood Coalition was continuing their efforts to build popular support in their legal efforts. The Mendota Mdewakanton Dakota were doing cultural ceremonies, sweat lodge, powwows.
We're looking for support for a spiritual ride that we will be having from Makato. We'll be riding 25 miles a day. We will end the Minnehaha Free State occupation.
Horses. Those are holy animals. 4 legs that represent the directions. They have 2 ears that point up to the Creator. They have a tail that points to our grandmother, the earth. And you sit in the center when you ride. We've spoken with several people down at Prairie Island, the Owens, sobriety riders from Turtle Mountain. But if there's any federal agents listening, don't try to stop our ride because we're just going to run you over with our horses.
Fathers and children, creatures young and grown, called by mighty drumming of sacred hooves on stone. The sun, the spirit horses, dancing on a storm. Mercy for the people, old ways, new dreams reborn.
Horrible Looking Horse is the keeper of the sacred buffalo calf pipe, and the Pope would be to the Catholics what Horrible Looking Horse would be to us.
I'd like to thank each and every one of you as you stand in a circle. The journey that we made, the runners, the riders, this is the way of life. That every day, when something is good, it's going to be hard because we're putting ourselves to honor something much greater than us.
They condemned her home. She went to condemnation court on it. Finally, after 43 years, she asked me what she should do. They were only going to give her so much money for her home. And I simply told her, Carol, your fight's over. You fought this thing long enough. The spirits kept you here to fight this thing.
And raccoons, I saw them last night. My God, they're huge. I mean, they are huge. That's one of my biggest sadnesses, is to leave all the animals. Oh, here we are. We're holding up the movers.
MnDOT took her to court
So this is the day she had to move. And we thought that we would save this from happening. Hopefully we can save the rest of the land and all of the trees that are here and the sacred land. I have never protested anything else in my life, and I thought that this was that important to do that.
There's a river flowing near me, and I've watched that river change and grow.
There are committed people here who are putting themselves in harm's way in order to stop this destruction.
And I have heard the lone wolves cry.
Any feelings about what they're going to do in the next couple days?
Well, it looks to me by the outline of a helicopter within a couple hundred feet of my head that they might be coming in here.
Okay.
If you're into nature and you love trees and birds and all that, and you're with nature, then you're a terrorist or you're a goof, you know.
I have seen great glaciers melting.
Get my picture, huh?
And I've met lightning.
There's another one.
Eye to eye.
We call it a chuichasha. That's common men and women, you know, holding together, and it's not easy to keep, you know, as many people as we have here. I mean, it's hard to live with one person, let alone, you know, different people that come from such different backgrounds.
But now I hear bulldozers coming, and I know that I am soon to die.
Sometimes it gets overwhelming, you know. But I can't stop.
I got a phone call on the 19th of December, about 11 o'clock at night, that this was the night that they were coming to bust the camp, and that I should come there to be a nonviolent witness.
We had this phone tree with thousands of people on it who wanted to be notified.
And then I got another call from basically a friend in the media who had heard it.
What they did by coming in at 4 a.m. is they made that phone tree ineffective.
The lockdown site itself was a room, it had a fireplace.
There were a number of people in the different houses, and there were a few people hanging around outside.
It was also a really, really cold day.
So we went and we locked down into our sites.
We had a cell phone in there, and Jimmy was out roving in his van, and I remember him calling at one point and just being like, Marshall, there's just this incredible line of state troopers heading towards the airport. He set up his van so he could see the National Guard base, and he watched as they just poured in with equipment.
Joe Hill was getting himself into his lockdown position in the about 20-foot high tripod. And there was a ladder up against the house, and I said, would you like somebody up on the roof next to you?
I phoned up the Earth First Journal office out in Oregon and was just like, this is it. And they're like, how do you know this is it? And we're like, because we can hear the helicopter.
And suddenly all these yellow Ryder trucks start coming down Hiawatha, and then we see other police cars now coming too.
We didn't know what was going to happen. And we were very concerned because some of our friends who were out in California had received pepper spray in their eyes directly. This judge in California said that it was okay for the police in California to basically torture people to get them out of their lockdown sites.
Gas started coming into our lockdown right before they arrived.
There were 7 Ryder trucks, one went to each building, and the garage door kind of thing on the back of the Ryder truck just shot up really fast, and soldiers exploded out of that truck. And they had helmets on, and they had assault rifles, and they had flashlights.
The infiltrators had sabotaged a lot of things around the encampment in the 2 days beforehand, locks to some places so that the police could get in easily, creating holes in walls of some places so that they could gas into the rooms.
And it wasn't like they poured out of those trucks and then wondered what to do.
I was sort of expecting the police to follow what are supposed to be procedures that are followed in the United States.
It looked like a scene out of another country, like the stuff you see on TV where they show the military is crushing the people. It was very similar.
And then behind the yellow trucks came a parade of state patrol cars. And then they drove up into the yards of the people across the street. So there was a line of running police cars, bumper to bumper.
And all we heard was the sound of breaking glass.
They were throwing tear gas into the basements where people were locked down.
And I couldn't breathe.
What are they doing? Putting these sticks between us and our friends on the other side of the street so that when they beat our friends up, we will not be able to witness that. And the police officer who was facing me went.
They were clicking their guns, you could hear that noise. They were just screaming, get down, get the f down, and they were above us, and it was like elephants.
We hear just boots on the stairs, running down the stairs, and they were screaming.
One was like, hey, should we tear gas them, boss? You know, and the other one was like, no, they've got gas masks down there.
And I know the difference between authority and aggression and fear. And there was fear in their voices.
Which was interesting because we were the only 2 people in the entire camp who had gas masks, and they knew it.
Come out with your hands up, come out with your hands up. And both of us had locked into the chimney at this point.
A frightened cop who's about to barge into a dark room where your arm is hidden in a lockdown.
At that point, Solstice and I decided to unlock.
It was a difficult decision because we had to pry this thing off with a crowbar, and the decision to pick up a crowbar while they were trying to batter down the wall, and it looked like it was going to go.
As we're getting pulled out through this thing, they've got their laser sights like on us, just trained on us. You know, and they're picking me up, holding me, and just screaming, where are the weapons?
I was on the ground, but I was tackled like by at least three different people. The major command was show me other hand, and I was explaining to them, although they probably couldn't hear me very well with the gas mask on, I was explaining to them that I'm nonviolent and I can't remove my hand, it's locked.
No, we know you can remove your hand. You have a strap around your wrist with a carabiner on it, and that carabiner is linked into a little piece of rebar in the middle there. So we know that you can unlock that carabiner anytime you want to. And we were like, great.
They hit you right on your muscle here, so you can't, like, it doesn't leave marks, and like it was incredibly, incredibly painful.
We called all the media when we knew something was coming down, and they never came. The press came with the police after the yellow trucks. The media has no footage of the soldiers pouring out of those trucks with assault rifles.
The media being boxed in and kept from the scene gave the police free rein to be incredibly brutal, and some would even use the word torture to describe what happened that night.
They ripped my mask off, and they applied, like, I don't know if it was pepper spray, pepper gel, or whatever, I didn't see it.
Sprayed the pepper spray onto his glove and wiped it in our eyes with his glove.
Well, he was sitting on my back, he lifted my head up like this and applied it, like whatever was on his glove, he applied it to my face.
It's like putting hair gel on your face. It's like...
He just caked it in there. There was tons of it. My ears.
And it hurt, and it made me blind, and it made me, you know, it didn't make me puke, but it was like, it was just snot everywhere, and actually it got rid of my head cold.
You are lawless! You are not law-filled!
As I was walking by, like, people being carried up the stairs, I remember being hit in the face by different people. It was like a spanking machine on your birthday. Except it was punches and kicks. And
one of them pointed something that was cold and metallic right here and cocked it and said, listen, unlock now or I shoot. And at that point it was like, okay, bye. And like I unlocked right away because I had no reason to believe that they wouldn't shoot me.
We were now in plain sight of the support people across the street. The violence was done in basements and inside tents and inside rooms of houses where we were totally out of the view of press cameras.
They dragged us up the stairs and they threw us outside, and I remember never being so happy to see the night. Just really feeling like if something had gone wrong or someone had dropped something or if we hadn't been totally just disciplined about what we were doing and how we did it, that someone could have been shot really easy.
They got a ladder, and two of them climbed up on the roof where I was. And he says, "Are you going to come down now?" And I said, "No." And then he pulls my glasses and my hat to the back of my head and holds a small canister. Then he holds my eyes open one at a time and puts a direct spray into each of them. And after that point, I was blind. I couldn't see a thing. And I was in a pretty precarious situation, perched on the peak of a roof with these two big cops on either side of me who weren't being very friendly.
More than anything, I just kept thinking they came in like this because they knew if they took their time, a huge crowd would gather, and they didn't want that. They didn't want this to take 6-8 hours like it could have if they cut us out, because then the crowds might have gathered and they would have had to back off. One of the most amazing things is that we all started to just look at each other and smile. And Zach tried to show us how all to get out of our handcuffs, because he's going like, "See, look," you know, and then, because I still haven't figured out that trick yet. But definitely this feeling as they were taking us down to the station was that, I mean, we'll be back.
People had been arrested and put in cars and dragged away, and the police had built their bonfires and were burning teepees and everything else, and they were roasting weenies over the fires, and a little celebration for them to come and pepper gel people and tear gas them and use paint compliances, and now we're going to roast weenies. And I always remember in my mind thinking, Santa Claus is the last person arrested.
Cover your face! Cover your face!
Don't look up!
No compromise! This is sacred land! They're gonna destroy the spring! It ain't right! The fascists been not gonna make decisions that the community ought to be making! We will win! We will win! We will win! We have won! We have won!
There goes Santa.
Annie Carlson during the raid actually came out and said,
"These people are politely referred to as protesters. They're not protesters in the normal use of that word. They are basically anarchists."
They want to declare a sovereign nation. And that was his justification for the lengths that the police went to. And I think that's actually really telling. I think that he did know what was up. I don't think he was naive at all about what was going on. We were trying to say communities are sovereign to determine their own futures and determine development projects and to have a voice instead of this sham of democracy that we've seen. This was a struggle of eminent domain versus community autonomy.
Goodbye, dear house. Goodbye, dear house. Goodbye, dear house. I will miss you. You are in my heart.
Goodbye, little house.
I think it's real clear to me that their intent in having 600 police come after us was intimidation, and that their intent in arresting us the way they did was street justice. It was not going to wait for a court to decide whatever trespassing is. Too small a charge. All they're going to do is slap our hand for trespassing. They wanted us not to come back again.
I think they went to these lengths at this raid, first and foremost, to punish us for what we had cost them politically, and to try to send that message to us that you do not challenge the way it is.
90% of us had our charges dismissed because they didn't arrest us properly.
Journalists couldn't cover the story so that they could go to town beating people and getting away with it.
We entered into the largest police operation in the history of the state of Minnesota without giving any thought to how we're supposed to arrest these people.
Surprisingly, we decided to go right back to the land and set up a new encampment. A couple nights later, to get a phone call and be like, okay, we're going back down. We're not really looking forward to it all that much. And for the first couple weeks of it, you know, not really being able to sleep down there.
I had nightmares about the first raid for months. You know, I would never for a second have thought that wasn't worth it.
Living out at the camp, especially after the first raid, really, really changed me. It was very, very clear that they could take anything from us. They could destroy the material structures that were out there. They could destroy the natural structures that were out there, that it could come at any moment and it could come in the middle of the night. And I had to I remember having to learn how to go to sleep with that. And what really mattered were the other people that were there. We could make our homes in our relationships with each other, and no one could take that away.
Our coming right back to the land immediately and organizing a speak out, which was attended by over 500 people, served to really empower people.
This is a white mallard.
I think things mellowed out, and I think it was good that they did. I think we could put more energy then into organizing popular support around it. MnDOT at that point really lost this battle morally, on a moral level.
Now we've got lawyers, we've got legislators helping us. Karen Clark, the 3 other legislators are now writing up a resolution to save this spot and the 4 trees for the cultural significance of the area.
The prize event was the Stop 55 Go Oaks aerial photo.
Dan the Oak Man, just out of the blue, he's like, you know, I really want to do this big group photo.
And we had done this great picture the previous year and managed to get 200 people to show up. This time he said, it's got to be an aerial photo in the field. We did not want to publicize it as such because we were concerned that the powers that be would block a flight because it's so close to the airport. And so we left that out, and we just distributed flyers saying, come be in the 2nd annual Oak Photo. Sure enough, the day of, this wonderful stream of people walking down the path, you know, this great single file line of people that just kept pouring in. And somebody who runs a tree trimming company in the area came and brought the cherry pickers. And I remember rising up in this thing, and I had my camera, you know, with me, and all of a sudden through the viewfinder, I was like, oh, you can see it! You can see it, so Stop 55, Go Oaks! And I cheered from up there, and everybody cheered from down in the field, and it was so thrilling. About 1,000 people, you know, we figured came that day, and it was just...
You guys like coming here?
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
Especially a place where we went to with the ducks and stuff.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Thanks for all the prayers you guys said.
Okay. All right.
God put us here. Creator put us here. The Mdewakanton Dakota is always considered this place to be the center of the earth.
The creation story for the Mdewakanton, or the Mendota Band, is right down here, where the confluence of the Mississippi and the Minnesota rivers. The first creation come from that point. So there are sacred sites here that spring where the spirit of Unktehi lives. So that's how important this land is.
The high places around here have always been burial places.
I always grew up knowing the teachings because my dad would tell us that had always been a place where Native people had met, and in fact there were many graves all along there. There were many babies and children who had died at Fort Snelling, and that the spring was a sacred place.
And here we are, Indigenous people, coming to a different culture and a different culture's institutions. Who will decide what is sacred and what is a traditional cultural property?
Our people have always planned for 7 generations ahead.
We should be adding more land to our park system rather than hell-bent on asphalting every available inch of ground in this country, which is directly linked to global warming and what will prove to be a disaster in the future.
There's no other grounds that are described. Yeah, and the nearest that I can say to you is near the falls. The lodge being near the falls, between the falls and the sacred water place. There was the lodge, to which all of these people congregated either together or separately at times.
Come to the lodge and experience it, then you'll understand.
Everything has a spirit. Everything. It's very sacred. Well, that was a place of sacredness where everything is available. Everything is convenient. And the waterways, the Minnesota River that goes into the Mississippi, and the water, the springs, sacred, that come right out of the ground, natural, pure.
And we have a Ojibwe water ceremony with a certain song. The water's held in 4 directions by 4 women, and this beautiful Wawa song is sang.
I felt really sure that once we were at the spring, that how could their hearts hold on to their feelings?
This is the birthplace of some of our nations. This is the birthplace, even of the state of Minnesota, isn't it?
We don't want nobody to bother this place. We want it to continue to provide for the people who want it, who need it.
There was a Kiowa man who came. Even though that tribe isn't located here, the Mississippi is very important, and how every so many years they have a ceremony where they begin at the headwaters, and then they stop at Camp Coldwater, and then they stop at various places all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico.
And that water keeps on running, and those trees are standing tall, and together we are calling. You can't build that road at all, and I can see tomorrow and the years and years to come, and I see the trees are standing, and I hear that water run.
They said thank you. I mean, they did hold themselves apart from us, you know, you could feel that.
They had hired a company, and that company took 15 hours of oral testimony by Native American elders from all over the country, and used that 15 hours as an appendix to the more objective Berger report, proving that the trees weren't sacred.
We talked, and all our testimony talked about the whole area. People came here and camped and used this as like a sanctuary.
You agree with that? They said that the land was sacred from the falls to the water. Right. And then we know there were burials at the fort. So that whole area from the falls over would be sacred land.
It's a traditional gathering place, and it was at one time neutral ground, no question.
and there is no evidence to support claims that human burial or Native American sacred sites lay in the path of this project.
The majority of the actual archaeological shovel tests show that the area had been previously filled and previously disturbed.
That argument that this is an already damaged area. Well, you know, why would you expect us to protect this because it's already ruined, and we ruined it, is something that comes up over and over again.
There's a lot of work to be done in cross-cultural coalitions. There's different languages. We all spoke English here, but different terms mean different things. Sometimes it went really smoothly, and sometimes it was rough, and we worked through those times though.
There's a whole period in which people, particularly from the Mendota community, really wanted things to kind of calm down a little bit. They wanted to focus more on the encampment. When they really started coming for the trees up there in the park, it was just all-out defense for the land there.
You're going to be arrested. Please move across the road. This isn't illegal action. These people are in the park. You're arresting people in the park.
She's hurt? What's wrong? You're
What
the one
God are
that
you
ran.
serving?
He's right.
They took 20 trees yesterday, at least 100 to 110 more trees they're going to take out of this park to build this road.
Stop this road! Stop this road!
Everybody went out and they took their places in the street and sat calmly and linked arms. Immediately after the people sat down in the street, the troopers in the Minneapolis City Police came rushing out and started dragging people out. There was a camera woman there, and so I hollered at her, "Take a picture of this." And then the next thing I knew, I was like face down, and you know, there was a knee in my back and a hand on my neck. They really targeted, made sure all the Native people got arrested. So eventually, you know, they took, I don't know how many pictures of us, and we're all still handcuffed, and they put us all in this little wagon, I guess it was, so then they closed the doors. 90-degree weather, and so we started singing.
Want to do it right now? Let's do it. Get to it right away. Pretty much all the direct actions that we did, besides the ongoing direct action of the encampment, would be small affinity groups who took on that responsibility of planning and carrying out the action.
Are you okay? You all right?
I'm all right.
Good.
Hang in there. This happens every day. So far there's been 50, 60 arrests.
Right.
$50,000 a day for the first couple of days. Either they're going to have an occupying army, or they're going to have the fire department out here every 20 minutes.
Right. Although MnDOT says this isn't going to stop them.
Well, we'll see. What's that? I said we stopped them for half a day. Doing pretty good. That starts adding up.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Capitol is now closed. You need to leave or you will be arrested.
And when the cops and dozers come to carry off every face, will you come to Minnehaha? Rise up, lock down, and take their place. 'Cause it's morning at the Minnehaha Free State, a little strip of stolen native land along the banks of the Mississippi. Right here the Mendota make their stand. It's morning at the Minnehaha Free State, a little strip of stolen native land.
We had this moment when we were able to unite with the African American and Hmong people up north who were having their houses bulldozed on North Highway 55, and we had the North-South Highway 55 coalition, and we stood together. And that whole thing about divide and conquer stopped working.
Really at the heart of this was the question of how communities make decisions. We just decided to march without a permit. You had Jim Anderson and Reverend Curtis Heron at the front of this march. I remember the cops sort of like careening down the street towards us and getting out of their cars and sort of running up, and then they see Curtis Heron there. And they get back in their cars and then they escort the march the entire rest of the way.
Right before you cross over the bridge, the creek, there's this, like this big cottonwood that like grabs at me every time I go by because it's threatened.
It was successfully in the way.
People set up a big hammock that multiple people could sleep in, and it was higher up, so it was not as easy to be reached by cherry pickers or anything the cops brought around.
I've had experience sitting in trees before out in the redwoods, and so that was kind of my field of expertise. So the first day of the siege of the cottonwood tree, before sunrise, some people went and set up a tripod in the middle of Hiawatha Avenue, and that tripod had two people with their necks locked with U-locks, bicycle locks, to it.
You're on her foot.
We were successful in shutting down one lane of the highway, so some of the traffic had to be diverted and the area was cordoned off. That morning, there was 2 people in the cottonwood tree, and then throughout the morning, 5 more of us managed to get ourselves into the tree.
They can't kill the spirit. She's like a mountain, brave and strong. She lives on and on and on and on. They can't kill the spirit. She's like a mountain, brave and strong. She lives on and on and on and on. They can't kill the spirit. She's like a mountain, brave and strong. She lives on and on and on and on.
The police and workers came up in a cherry picker and started to cut branches off of the tree.
Woodman's care that tree, touch not a single bough. It knew that sheltered me, and I'll protect it now. It was my grandfather's hand that laid it on this spot. The woodman lie its hand, thy ass shall find it now. My mother kissed me here, my father took my hand. Forgive this foolish tear, and let that old stare.
The fire truck retreated. He was just hanging from the rope, and he was trying to climb back up into the tree on the rope, and when one of the police officers grabbed the end of the rope and started shaking it, and he actually fell.
I've already dropped. We feed him out on the stretcher.
Wednesday, September 29th, I locked down with 10 McAllister students in MnDOT.
Let's go, oak trees, let's go. Let's go, oak trees, let's go.
We went in about 8 o'clock, 5 people in lockboxes.
Let's go, oak trees, let's go. Let's go, oak trees.
You need to leave the building, you're to be arrested.
A friend and I were locked into the revolving door, and we sat down and we locked our necks together. And that happened next door to us too with another revolving door.
You need to leave or you will be arrested.
Why not be over there where the other people are?
Because it's unlawful assembly and you're part of it.
About me and those people, there are other people that want to go over there.
What we anticipate is will be a total of 13 arrests today. They're making a statement. Unfortunately, by doing so, they're creating a fire hazard here in a state building. You've got probably close to a dozen state troopers here, and that's a drain on our resources as well, as is that entire Highway 55 project.
They're checking all the trees and...
Vengeful, maybe that's the right word. Because after we locked down, the next day they cut down 13 trees.
Was somebody in it?
No. 4 oaks, 4 elms, 2 maple, 1 willow, and 1 cedar. McAllister College students went to MnDOT's building and locked down, tried to shut the building down in solidarity for us.
Those of us who lived at that encampment for the first 4 months, and Carol Kratz, who lived there for most of her life, were particularly connected to the trees in that area. We knew each one of those trees. We spent a lot of time sitting in them and just passing by them on security shifts.
I haven't won yet, man, and I have vowed that they're not putting this road through here.
It was a real honor to be in that tree. The cottonwood is considered the tree of life to the Dakota peoples and many different native tribes of this continent. As I was there alone for all of those days, I started relating to the tree more intimately and really feeling the tree to be this elder, this grandmother. All of the small cottonwood trees and all the other trees in that whole area had already been cut down, so the tree was, telling me through my heart that all these people down there supporting us are like my children. So I really felt this giving from the tree and giving back from the people. In a way, it felt like I was working for hospice.
Stop the reroute.
People are gonna have to leave. If you do not leave, you will be arrested.
This is a parkway, sir.
Don't give them what they want! They're driving us away from the bridge.
The fire truck turned towards the cottonwood tree and started coming towards the branches that I was occupying, and they first went for the web, and they started slashing the web with big knives until there was really no place for me to be. They were able to cut my safety line that was attached to the tree. We call it a lifeline.
We love you, Nettle!
So here I was, having basically fasted for the past 4 days, and I was feeling a bit weak. And all the lights, there were about 60 police cars on the ground, and so the police just started reaching out and grabbing for me, and my knees got wobbly because it was pretty scary just being there, not connected to the tree anymore. I basically surrendered and stepped into the bucket of the fire truck.
Things escalated when they were up in the north part, cutting down lots of trees, pretty much every day or every week. That became a pretty dangerous situation. People were really at their end. Construction workers were, cops were. We were all stressed out, and police and construction workers were not valuing people's safety or lives.
What about her? What about her? She's 17 years old.
It started to become pretty apparent that unless there was a political miracle, we were going to have a real difficult time winning this struggle. It was hard to think strategically when you can't envision victory anymore.
We were told that we had to put some offerings here. We're going to put eagle feathers in the tops of these trees, and we're going to give something that people don't usually know about what Indian people do, and that's giving of yourself. We're going to put flesh offerings on these trees. That's what we were instructed to do.
Less than a week prior to the lawsuit about the trees, MnDOT took the trees.
Because of the first raid, when they came with the rider trucks and all their SWAT teams and everything, I was really afraid that something like that might happen again if we left it all to chance. So I talked to Captain Kevin Kittredge. He's the commander of the State Highway Patrol, and he would be the one that they put in charge of doing this second raid. And I said, well, what about you burning our teepees and all this? He said, oh, no, that's not going to happen. He wanted to know what we were going to do, and I said, well, I've been instructed to sit around the trees and pray, and that's what I'm asking everyone else to do there. I said, there's no weapons, there's nobody going to resist you, there's nobody going to fight you, you know, we're nonviolent, and that's the way we kept it the whole time. He reassured me that none of those things would happen again, that it would be an orderly evacuation this time. He was one of the most honest people that I had talked to through this whole ordeal.
Like was instructed.
And there was something so symbolic about the Native people being able to sit on this sacred piece of land that had been declared not sacred by the power structure, and to just sit there and be with it in its last moments as the European American people were being dragged away to jail to allow them to do that. And that was, there was a healing on that spot, and that was just huge.
I speak for this tree. In the path of another road, are we designing for cars or for people?
So I was standing behind the line, directly across from where the trees were, and my phone rang. So I answered it, and it was the mayor. And she said, Sharon, I just want you to know that I've instructed the police to conduct themselves with honor and treat everybody that way. And so I said to her, I said, Sharon, you should be here. I just cried. It was all very traumatic.
This is cultural genocide, trying to erase the memory of a people.
They can never take away what happened between the Native American people and the white people of conscience that stood there with them that final day.
Why are you weeping? Are you mourning for the land where the highway storms through the place we made our stand? By eminent domain they came and the forest fell to their command. Pepper spray and chainsaws, it's painful. Here's my hand. Hold it now and you will feel my energy has drained from 16 months of weather and sun, snow, and rain, from bottom line and lockdowns and learning sacred ways, from 16 months of battle in their eminent domain. But we had a feeling I just can't explain. Chainsaws and dolls as we send on their way. Sometimes we even believe we'd stop that highway, so hold on. Minnehaha, sing your song. Hiawatha, been here so long. Minnehaha, roll on. Whoa, whoa. There we made our home, where the oak savanna meets the river bluffs. There we lived our visions of autonomy and love. Heard you say with tears in your eyes as they took you away in handcuffs. It was a hell of a fight, but it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough. And I'm so tired of seeing everything I love destroyed. And I'm so tired of losing every battle that I joined. And I'm so tired of seeing everything I love destroyed. And I'm so tired of losing every battle that I joined. Baby, baby. Don't despair, not all is lost. They make it their damn highway, but just look at the cost. Next time they want to pave the sacred, you know they'll hesitate. Last thing they want popping up is another free state song. Don't despair, this was a hell of a training ground. For the next fight and for the next round. And the kids raised here at Minnehaha are bound to throw some of the punches that bring this system down. Don't give up hope, there will be rebirth. Then beauty and rebellion shall become synonymous. More and more in the people's consciousness. Don't give up hope, there will be rebirth. As the system makes a sicker hand that defies the earth, then beauty and rebellion shall become synonymous. More and more in the people's consciousness. More and more in the people's consciousness. Beauty and rebellion shall become synonymous. Beauty and rebellion shall become synonymous. Beauty and rebellion shall become synonymous.
Chose